listening to Transformation in Trials. Welcome to another episode of Transformation in Trials. I'm your host, Eva Papadopoulou. In this podcast, we explore how clinical trials are currently transforming so we can identify trends that can be further accelerated. We want to ensure that no patient has to wait for treatment and we get drugs to them as quickly as possible. Welcome to another episode of Transformation in Trials. Today, we're going to focus on the topic of preventive healthcare. And in the studio with me, I have Eva Papadopoulou. And Eva, could you tell us a little bit more about what you're currently up to?
Yes, Ivana, thank you for having me. So my name is Eva Papadopoulou, and I'm a mental health professional, but I also am an expert in digital and AI-enabled healthcare solutions. So I have been in this technology area for about 10 years. I started with digital and obviously moving to AI. And I'm very passionate about its potential and especially around the area of prevention.
Yeah, and this is what really got me when we first met, is your passion about prevention. I really love that. And also like mental health care, how can we make sure that we reduce the spending instead of increasing it? So excited about this topic. But anywho,
Cool.
just to set the stage for some of our listeners, can you tell us more about how is it today? What is the distribution of intervention treatment versus preventative care, especially when it comes to mental health care?
Yes, so obviously different things happen in different countries, but I think also the numbers I'll give you are based in UK, but I think it's quite similar across the Western countries. So basically healthcare now is reactive and intervention-based care. So basically people need to be quite unwell to receive treatment. That's not only in mental health, that's generally applied. Prevention remains underfunded and underutilized. The latest I've seen might be different now, but it's 10%, less than 10% of the budget is estimated that is used for prevention. But also evidence shows that interventions lead to better outcomes. So if you use preventative healthcare, there will be better outcomes and maybe it will be more cost effective in the future.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah.
10%, that is not a lot.
Yeah.
Eva, so if we just really try to define what preventative healthcare is, if you imagine like a 17-year-old high school student who has not yet entered the labor force, how would you explain what is preventive healthcare?
So I think an area of healthcare that they got it right on it, and that would be the example I would give is dental care. Mm-hmm. So basically, we brush our teeth 2-3 times a day to prevent cavities. We also go to hygienist twice a year just to explore, just to do a super deep clean and explore if there is anything else. And every 2-3 years, we have an X-ray to make sure that there is no anything hidden. Okay, mm-hmm. So that would be the example we'll give it. If I'm going to give a definition, is things that you do regularly to stay healthy and avoid problems in the future. So when it comes to mental health, I think it starts with education, is techniques to manage stress, is talking and learning to talk and learning to listen as well, is able to recognize your baseline, but also feelings and affects that are outside your baseline, and having a support system. So the general thinking is that we take care of our mind and our body before it breaks, not after it breaks. So that's the gist of it.
That's a great explanation. I love the example of dental healthcare. That is an area where that's what we're doing. That is the primary.
Exactly. And they get it right. And I haven't researched this, but I don't think 100 years ago we had it right. There was a shift in the culture.
Yeah.
And we changed. So why can't we generalize the shift?
My grandfather got all of his teeth pulled out when he was 14 and got dentures because that was like, then you avoid all this pain that was bringing in your teeth.
Yeah, my grandmother's the same. So they removed the teeth to put dentures instead of fixing it. That's the opposite of prevention.
Yes.
Now that's a very good example. The dental healthcare seems to be the only area that really has got it right now. Very interesting to think about. Which other areas could be well suited for this kind of shift?
So there's two big areas that I think you can apply immediately something. One is youth mental health. So basically, most mental health conditions before the age of 25. So you have a massive window of opportunity for early detection and prevention or early management. So that's one area. Another area that is it affects everyone is the workplace mental health. So basically, if you take proactive measures, you can reduce burnout and absenteeism and increase productivity, increase profit, and so on. Other areas that could prevention take place is substance use, common mental health issues as anxiety and depression, where upstream investment pays off and there will be benefits in the long run. So if we start with these areas, I think there will be so much benefit.
Those are some good areas. Wow. Before age 25, you can discover so many mental illnesses.
Mm-hmm.
That is, I did not know this.
Yeah. That doesn't mean we cannot look into mental health conditions that appear later in life, but I'm saying work with the young, work at work.
Yes.
And just tackle some the most common mental health conditions. Then it's a good start.
Yeah. And also recently I have learned that work PTSD is an actual phenomenon. That's like being in the workplace can actually damage our mental health or trigger really strong reactions. So I have also recently discovered that this is an area where much has to be done.
I might be wrong about it, but I've read it recently. It's like estimated $51 billion are lost in the US just because of mental health issues in the workforce. So I think that's a business case to begin with.
That is a good business case. There might also be a business case for looking at the work culture.
100%. Yeah.
But also dealing with the people who already have experienced the negative effects. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Work culture, kind of toxic environment, toxic leadership, that's a whole different conversation, but it does affect people and it can create massive stress and eventually burnout or depression.
Yeah. So one of the things you and I discussed first time we met was that incentive models for people developing new drugs are lacking for thinking about prevention also. From a life sciences side, we look more at how can we treat. We do not necessarily look at how can we prevent.
Mm-hmm.
How could we create some incentives so that we, from the life sciences side, started looking at prevention as a sort of treatment?
So I think it's shifting how we measure success in healthcare. I think that's the first thing. Mm-hmm. Value-based care models where outcomes matter more than the volume of services delivered is important. And then we need to create financial frameworks that reward long-term savings and population health improvement. There was one example, I don't know the outcomes and the metrics, but there was one private insurance company that were rewarding, the more you exercise, they're rewarding you by reducing the fee or something, the annual fee, something like that. This is a good way to understand how you get rewarded as an individual. Obviously, insurers, employers, government need to work on this and create new systems. AI can help now because obviously with so much data, they can track early indicators, risk factors, and determine return on investments and create models that can create incentives. But as I said, there's some kind of, I've seen it, as I said, I don't remember which insurance was, but it's like the more you exercise, they give you a tracker, some like iWatch or something. It's like the more you exercise, the more you take care of yourself, the less you're going to pay your insurance. Brilliant.
Yeah.
So
That's an incentive,
isn't it?
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And this leads me to the next topic I want to discuss. And that is, you mentioned technology as a means to track health. How can technology help us when we talk about mental health?
That's a good question. So health tech, obviously there's a big industry in health tech and mental health. One of the basic elements of prevention is prevention thrives on accessibility and scalability. So basically, and these are two things that digital is doing really well. You have the apps, you have the wearables, you have the online platforms, you have AI chatbots, everything that people can access in large scales immediately. All these things can enable to personalize support, to create nudges. So to give you an example, let's say I'm on my way to work, I'm driving, there is massive traffic, I'm start getting quite anxious, I'm going to be late. My wearable can actually track that and tell me, do your breathing exercise or listen to relaxing music or something. So there are ways to send you nudges because they can, all these devices can track initial signs, early warnings. So they are discrete. They could be 24/7. These are the things that could potentially support people with mental health and prevention.
But that makes sense. And where does the AI part come into it?
The AI part comes because the AI can personalize support. Yeah. And also it can give exactly what you want. If you have a generic platform, the classic, the digital interventions, it gives you generic support. AI can make a tailor-made support system or a nudge or detect early warnings based on your data. So personalization is very important because obviously more tailor-made to the individual, and then AI comes in and does better work than the generic platforms.
Yeah, that makes sense. When it comes to bridging this treatment and prevention gap, if we consider that health tech could potentially be one of the ways that we create that bridge. Having worked in several life science companies where we have attempted to create some sort of health tech to go with the drugs that we are providing, being only moderately successful with the health tech part, successful with the drug part. And based on what you have experienced, like how does health tech actually make an impact? How do we make it better?
I'll make it better. I think the success depends on co-designing with the end users. So I think when health tech can go wrong is just have a fantastic vision and idea and not consult the end users.
Yeah.
So I think co-designing is essential. I think integration is essential. So basically you cannot build health tech independently of other systems. And in general, have the people at heart. So basically make sure that the clinical pathway is smooth for the end users, basically. So I have seen amazing ideas, but without testing with the end users. And the ideas in principle are fantastic, but it doesn't work because you need to have people giving you feedback as to how it works in practice, and also have people at heart, just every little detail. They keep developing, not just do it. Just keep making it better all the time.
That resonates with any technology development, really. You need to focus on your users. Having access to more information about your health and mental health also puts a different role on us as citizens and people. Suddenly we know more about what's happening in our bodies. Mm-hmm. From your perspective, how can we make sure that people are also able to interpret the result that they get from the technology that they're surrounded by?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because technology could be quite stressful, if not harmful. And And it's also what technology are we using. So I was like, last time we talked, I told you like people are learning about mental health through TikTok now. So not helpful. No, don't do that. I think that it's a really good question that lies with education. We need to educate young people. We need to educate ourselves to understand what is what. And as I was saying earlier, it is important to start having understanding of the emotional language, start understanding your personal baseline, start how to talk about distressful issues, and also learn how to listen.
Yeah.
And technology could make sense in a way, because if I start seeing my blood pressure goes up and know nothing about it and Google it and then says, oh my God, you're going to have a stroke, I'm going to panic. Like, I don't understand it. I really don't know. I need to have some sort of education and say, okay, I just went up 100 floors. Yes, of course it goes up.
Yes. Yeah.
Or I just had a really distressive call. Let me do some breathing. So there needs to be some sort of basic education. And that's why I always say health first aid and generic first aid. That these are two things we should all know from school and other knowledge throughout our lives. This is not something privileged for few people. Everybody should know about it.
Yeah.
So you can understand and interpret all the data that is given by the apps.
I agree. For a while I was wearing a continuous glucose monitor just to learn more about my blood sugar. And I found that I needed to understand how the digestive system works, how cells consume energy to really understand. So what exactly what are these numbers telling me?
Exactly.
And even though like I've had biology in school and stuff, I felt like I watched a whole bunch of YouTube about how this works.
If you go back to social media, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, sometimes a good resource and you had to understand it. And that.
Yeah, but it did like somewhat get me to think that if health technology is going to be a part of everyone's lives, I'm not sure we're equipped for this. There's an educational gap that we need to start closing also as a society.
Yeah.
To make sure that people know what to react to and what is within the norm. And what are actually signals that they need to act on.
100%. That's what I said. It needs to start from school. And equally, what you said with the glucose, I think equally basic principles of healthy eating and also what it really does to the body should start at school as well. Yeah. So this is the whole kind of prevention, understanding ethos. It's like we need to know these things, not from YouTube later in life, but from school.
Yeah. Yes. What about this whole, if we imagine a world, if prevention was to take a larger stage, if we imagine that we do learn about it in school, we do monitor ourselves more, what would this do to our society?
I think it's a culture shift. So let's go back to the dental care, okay?
Yeah.
I really don't think your grandparents and my grandparents were so keen in actually taking care of themselves in the dental or hygiene. Sometime, at some point, there was a cultural shift. I don't know why. I don't know what happened. I haven't looked into it, but there was a major cultural shift where we all understood that we need to brush our teeth 3 times a day. How did that happen? When did it happen? So in a similar way, there needs to be a cultural shift when we understand that we need to take care of ourselves, what the mental health markers, what is I'm okay feel to each person, and when we not feeling okay, and what do we do about it, and what is the best kind of way to approach each of the symptoms. I think it will create a calmer society and kind of people. And I think the most important thing is that not to, as I said earlier, not to seek help when you are really unwell. Yeah. Because it takes twice the effort, the time to get back on track. So if you start, make sure you take care of yourself. And if you're not feeling really well, know what to do immediately and get some sort of support immediately in order not to go down the line of just being quite unwell. I think that will be better. And as I said, especially with youth and especially in the workplace. So people like less burnout, less absence, more productivity, and just feel better about work and life. Nothing wrong with that.
Huge advantages there, yeah.
But don't say the negative in this. How can this be bad?
Yeah. Eva, how did you get into this space in the first place? How did you get into mental health? How did you get into the digital and now AI fields?
So basically, I'm very creative. I studied psychology. I love innovation. Like anything new, I will be the first to adapt or like I'm going to go for it. And I love to, it's very important for me to make a positive impact. As a psychologist, as a therapist, obviously I do it on individual levels. And I wanted to create a shift from reactive to proactive. So instead of, and again, seeing people, because obviously in my private practice, I've seen people who are really unwell. So it's like, how can we help people to get the tools and be empowered to manage their own well-being? So in terms of my career, as I said, I started in psychotherapy, psychology space, moved on management and transformation change management. And then I entered the digital world when I started being a transformation consultant and doing implementations and B-skills implementation of new technologies. And that's the story, basically. It's all about passion.
Yeah. And also something about the scale where you can help the individual, but there are some structural things also where you can help more people by changing some of the structures.
Yeah, exactly. And I love to be part of this conversation. I really like to be with other people with the same mind, thinking things through. And I think health tech is a fantastic preventative tool. It's preventative early intervention aftercare tool. It releases so much capacity, and it's also kind of, it's good to support people before they're really unwell.
Yeah. And I think that we are in a shift where like something is changing from whose responsibility health is. Like for years, it was the doctors. It is changing more to be the individuals.
Exactly.
And the tools are changing. And I think the trends towards more preventative healthcare is a part of this bigger restructuring of how we view health.
Yeah. To give you an example here in UK, so in order to get any kind of exploration test, like blood test, for example, you need to have symptoms. Otherwise, not going to do it because you appear well. Okay.
Yeah.
So in Greece, there is a culture, and I go to Greece and I do that, actually. I go every year, but I go sometimes every 2 years and I do a full MOT. It's it's cheaper than UK, but I get full blood tests, full ultrasound, all the basic prevention tests. So I go to Greece, I do that. There is always a little something that obviously it doesn't show. But if I leave it and not do anything about it, eventually it will be a big something, then I will need a full-on treatment. But now that I get a little bit, a bit of cholesterol, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of something, then I can do something about it. Will affect other things.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's also cool that it's possible in Greece getting like a full array. There's also a difference between, like in the US, they do this yearly checkup. Of course, you have to be insured to get that. But in Scandinavia, that's not a thing. You also have to be unwell to get treatment. And the system is wary of people who are trying to understand health if there's nothing wrong.
It doesn't exist here. Like, it's not in UK. We don't have it. You get like when you are above 45, you can have a blood test that measures 3 basic things: cholesterol, diabetes, and liver function. 3. And I go to Greece and I get 50 different things like vitamins, deficiency, everything.
Yeah, that is a big difference.
But it's a cultural kind of the way the culture thinks about things. And that's why I think because it's a culture shift, it can change.
Yeah, and I'm now more hopeful with the dental example.
Yes, yes.
That did change at some point. Yeah.
Good example.
Eva, as we start rounding off, I always ask my guests the same question in the end. And that is, if I gave you the Transformation Trials magic wand that can change one thing in the life sciences industry, what would you wish to change?
I would change the short-term thinking that dominates the healthcare funding and policy, and I would shift it to long-term thinking. So yeah,
that is an amazing wish. Long-term thinking, man. That'll be an interesting one to unpack and see how we can get closer to that.
So basically, invest in the future instead of firefighting in the present.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Eva, if some of my listeners want to talk more with you about any of the topics that we have discussed, where can they find you?
Find me on LinkedIn. My name is Eva and my surname is Papadopoulou. And yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn and I'm happy to have a conversation.
That is awesome, Eva. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. That was a great conversation.
I agree.
You're listening to Transformation in Trials. If you have a suggestion for a guest for our show, reach out to Sam Parnell or Ivana Rosendal on LinkedIn. You can find more episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or in any other player. Remember to subscribe and get the episodes hot off the editor.